We will go each item at 8 can't wait.
Let's discuss how department policy and the law measure up with 8 can't wait. As you can see, the use of the carotid control is not authorized by department policy. Next, 8 can't wait requires de-escalation. Our department policy requires that officers should consider conflict resolution and de-escalation techniques as time and circumstances reasonably permit for all types of calls for service. The third point of 8 can't wait requires officers to warn before shooting. Our policy and AB 392 are also consistent with Campaign Zero's policy. Our department policy requires that officers should evaluate other reasonably available resources and techniques when determining to use deadly force. The fifth point of 8 can't wait requires a duty to intervene. Next, 8 can't wait bans shooting at moving vehicles. But as you can see, our policy does allow for officers to discharge their firearm at moving vehicles under 2 very specific circumstances. Our department requires officers to use only that amount of force necessary. Our policy also restricts when an officer can use a taser or deadly force. You'll see that our department policy requires that any use of force be reported to include any time an officer points a taser or a firearm at a person.
Start with point number 1 on ban chokeholds and strangleholds. Is there any kind of punitive action against an officer for using this kind of force?
An officer is responsible for the force that they use. If an officer is using a technique that is the department doesn't train on or is not proportional or reasonable based on the reasonable officer standard, that officer can be liable for their actions out there.
Our recommendation is the language of chokehold, stranglehold, lateral vascular neck restraints, chest compression, and other tactics that restrict oxygen or blood flow to the head or neck be added to the police policy.
The motion passes on a 4-1 vote with Commissioner Savage dissenting.
We will move to the second point, which is required de-escalation.
I move that the HRC recommend that the City Council adopt the model use of force policy with respect to de-escalation. Prior to using physical, non-deadly, and/or deadly force, all law enforcement officers must use proper de-escalation techniques.
The motion passes on a 4-1 vote with Commissioner Savage dissenting.
Require exhaust all alternatives before shooting. Commissioner Lee.
I would move that the HRC recommend that the council adopt the SFPD policy, which states it is the policy of this department to use deadly force only as a last resort when reasonable alternatives have been exhausted or are not feasible.
The motion passes unanimously.
We're on number 5, duty to intervene.
I'd like to move that the commission recommend that the policy be amended to replace shall, when in a position to do so, with must intercede. And then the second piece of that would be to establish a minimal disciplinary action when this policy is violated.
Councilmember Tanaka said it best. I think this is something that council and the chief, and if they bring us back into the loop, is a discussion on how do we create culture and environment within the department.
Police department explore additional measures to cultivate a police culture that encourages safe reporting mechanism.
The motion does not pass on a 3-2 vote with Commissioner Stanger and Smith dissenting.
But it's not going to the council though?
It's not going to the council because it fails to vote.
If we don't want to be transparent about it, then okay.
No, we want to be democratic about it.
My suggestion is that Campaign Zero considers this met.
The motion passes on a 4-1 vote with Commissioner Lee dissenting.
Number 6, ban shooting at moving vehicles.
I am never going to condone a policy that absolutely bans it in every situation.
The HRC recommends that shooting at moving vehicles be banned unless the person poses a deadly threat.
The motion passes unanimously.
We are on required use of force continuum. It's been proven statistically more that those that are Black that interact with the police tend to end up with more force used on them. So how do we in Palo Alto deal with that bridge or that gap?
Remember, when an officer uses force, that officer is going to need to document that force in a police report.
My community doesn't believe police reports because of incidents like in Louisville. Went into Breonna Taylor's house and they had the shooting and everything. The police report was blank.
So I'm going to move that the HRC recommend that the police department explore different force continuum models.
I would say we should ask the policy and data committee if we can do some more research, but I also don't feel like a policy policy of just discretion given human bias is the right solution.
The motion passes unanimously.
Let's talk about require all force be reported.
I think what's important here is timely accessibility of data by the public. And that's why I last time was advocating, and I still advocate that we try to do like a Stanford Open Data Project.
Just a simple motion, PAPD complies with this.
The motion passes unanimously.